Oh, how's everybody doing? I was reading something in the Bible. Um, I'm I'm bilingual. I, my dominant language is English, uh, but I speak Spanish well enough so that I can pass for a native Puerto Rican. Um, I also dabble in a little German. Uh, the 2 years I spent in Germany, I learned how to order food, simple directions, that type of stuff. Now, um, this story that's in the Bible, it resonated with me. Okay, I'm gonna start in Acts chapter 2, uh, verse 1. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what they seemed to be tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Now they were staying in Jerusalem, God-fearing Jews from every nation under heaven. When they heard the sound, a crowd came together in bewilderment, because each one heard their own language being spoken. Utterly amazed, they asked, "Aren't all these who are speaking Galileans? Then how is it that each of us hears them in our native language?" Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus, and Asia, Persia, Pamphylia, Egypt, and parts of Libya near Cyrene, visitors from Rome, both Jews and converts to Judaism, Cretans and Arabs, we hear them declaring the wonders of God in our own tongues. Amazed and perplexed, they asked one another, "What does this mean?" Some, however, made fun of them and said that they had too much wine. Okay, and it all goes on to continue where Peter tells them, this is of the prophet Joel, But to get back to what they're saying here is the Galileans. That's like, if you put it in the modern context of today, it would be something like a hillbilly that never left it never left his county, and he's speaking in a language, like let's say he's from West Virginia, and he's speaking French. Never learned it, but he's speaking fluent French, and this other person is understanding everything he's saying. That's the work of God that's being described here. Now, um, I was when I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, uh, and I lived in a housing project, and all of the kids there that are Puerto Rican descent also, uh, we all spoke what we thought was Spanish, and I was in for a rude awakening when we moved to Puerto Rico, when I'm communicating to my uncle by marriage, and I said something about the roof, right? And so, how do you say roof in Spanish? What I thought, I just put an O at the end of it, rufo. Wrong. It's techo. So my uncle comes up and, he says in Spanish, like, "What did you say?" That rude awakening forced me into correctly learning everything. So I eventually became fluent enough that now I pass for a native Puerto Rican. So In this instance that they're describing in Acts chapter 2, it's very, I can see where people are like, okay, the ones that don't understand that they're mocking the work of God, they're going to mock these individuals. Other ones will be like amazed, like, whoa, this is something that's unheard of. And that's where the rubber meets the road, is where do you want to be used to give God the credit and not your own? Because when I was working at the prisons, and they would, these they had Puerto Rican inmates that would come in, or even inmates from Colombia and Mexico, and they would uh, they would tell the corrections officer, "Oh, I don't speak English. I don't speak English." Right? So then they would call for an interpreter, and I would go and the first thing I said, yeah, the first thing I would ask them in Spanish was, "How long have you been in this country?" And one guy said he's been in this country 34 years. 34 years and you haven't learned English? You should be ashamed of yourself. I would tell him in Spanish. Now, when I come across Puerto Rican inmates that never left the island, right? And they go, "Oh, I was born, I'm from Puerto Rico." I said, okay. They said, well, when you went to school, you were forced to take English in class since the first grade. And it says, and so you took English in school, and if you graduated, you went through 12 years. Why don't you understand? And don't be like that. They said, no, you understood him. You're just using that as a crutch to get to manipulate your way out of the situation. So I would tell the officer, ask him again, because I'm right there. Uh, but you people want, if you want to be used of God, you have to be open to receive this particular gift of receiving, hearing from God, and then letting it go in whatever language that He wants to use. He being the Holy Spirit, right? Well, let it go. Even if you don't understand yourself what you're saying, you just let it go. And whoever's is it for is going to hear, and they're going to like, oh, what was that all about, right? And it's for God's glory, not your own. So think about that and be blessed, people.